Welcome to Wealth of Words, where we explore really fascinating books that help us understand the world better. I'm Richard, and I'll be one of your hosts today.
I'm Isabella, and I'm so happy to be joining you on this journey through these amazing books.
And today we're going to be talking about The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. Now, this isn't like those typical finance books you see that are all about, like investment strategies and stuff.
Yeah, it's more about understanding, all those hidden things that shape how we think about money, how we feel about it.
Right. And before we dive in, we'd love for you to be a part of this journey with us. So make sure you follow Wealth of Words and share your thoughts on what we discussed today. We always love hearing from you, your insights and experiences.
Definitely. We think learning from each other is super important, and your perspectives really add so much to the conversation.
Okay, so let's get into it. One of the things Housel talks about right away is that there's no one right way to think about money.
Yeah.
There's no normal or rational way. Everybody's financial decisions make sense to them based on their own life experiences.
And he brings up this really interesting comparison between Ronald Read, who was a janitor and actually built up an $8 million fortune, and then there's this Harvard-educated millionaire who ended up losing everything.
Wow, that's a huge contrast. It really shows that financial success isn't always about having a fancy degree or following the usual advice.
Exactly. Read's story is like this incredible example of what you can achieve with long-term thinking and saving consistently, even if you don't start with a lot of money. It makes you think about your own saving habits. Like, are you making the most of your potential to build wealth over time?
It's a really good question to ask yourself. Housel also talks about something we often forget about, and that's the role of luck and risk.
Yeah.
He uses Bill Gates as an example.
Right, like Bill Gates was super lucky to go to one of the few high schools that even had a computer back then. That's how he got into programming. But then Housel also tells this really sad story about Gates's friend Kent Evans, who was just as talented but died young.
That's a powerful reminder that hard work and talent are super important, but there are things outside of our control that can affect our lives too.
Totally. I think acknowledging luck makes us more humble. It helps us realize that success isn't always just about how smart we are. And recognizing risk can help us be more resilient when things don't go our way, because sometimes things just happen.
It makes you think about those times in your own life when luck, good or bad, played a big part in your financial journey.
I think we've all had those moments that make us realize how unpredictable life and money can be.
For sure. So let's shift gears a bit and talk about compounding.
Yeah, this is something Housel spends a whole chapter on. He uses Warren Buffett as the main example.
I think he's a pretty good example to use.
Right. So the big takeaway is that Buffett's wealth didn't come from some secret strategy. It's more about the power of time and consistently investing. The earlier you start, the more time your money has to grow exponentially.
Housel makes a point about this, saying that if Buffett started investing at 30 instead of 10, he wouldn't be nearly as wealthy as he is today.
It's like that snowball effect. Small, consistent investments you make early on can turn into a huge amount of wealth over time. It really highlights why starting early is so important, even if you can only invest a little bit at first.
It's a great message, especially for young people who are just starting out. Now, Housel also talks about this interesting idea, the difference between becoming wealthy and staying wealthy.
He says that you need different mindsets for each. Building wealth is often about ambition, taking risks, but smart risks and having a lot of optimism. But staying wealthy, that's about being humble, being careful, and understanding how to manage risk.
He uses Jesse Livermore as an example.
Yeah.
He was a famous stock trader who made and lost fortunes several times.
Yeah. Livermore was great at spotting opportunities and making money, but he had trouble holding on to it. He would take too many risks, which led to big losses. The book suggests that we can learn from his mistakes.
It reminds me of that saying, it's harder to stay on top than it is to get there.
Exactly right. Building wealth and keeping it, those are two different things.
Yeah.
They require different skills and behaviors. It's about finding that balance between having enough drive to keep growing, but also being cautious enough to protect what you've already earned. It makes you think about your own financial goals. Are you more focused on building wealth right now or on protecting what you already have? And what kind of mindset do you think will help you the most in each of those phases?
Those are really important questions. Now, one concept that really stood out to me was the idea of enough.
Ah, yes. The seduction of enough Housel wants us to think about what enough actually means to us and to be careful about always wanting more.
And he uses the story of Rajat Gupta to illustrate this. He was a very successful executive, but even with all his wealth and status, he ended up getting convicted of insider trading.
It's a warning about comparing ourselves to others and always chasing after more and more success. Gupta had accomplished so much, but it was never enough, and that desire for more led to his downfall.
It shows that Being content and grateful can be really powerful. When we appreciate what we have instead of constantly wanting more, we can find true happiness.
Absolutely. It doesn't mean you have to settle or stop trying to improve. It's more about recognizing that true wealth is about having enough to live a life that matches your values, a life that's full of purpose and meaning, not just stuff.
That leads us to the idea of freedom, which Housel says is the ultimate form of wealth.
He thinks that money's real purpose is to give us choices and control over our time. It's about being free to do what we love, spend time with the people we care about, and live life on our own terms.
It's a really powerful way to think about wealth. It's not about having the most money. It's about having the freedom to make choices that align with what's important to you.
So think about it. What does freedom mean to you? How would having financial independence help you achieve your goals and live a more meaningful life?
That's something we should all think about. And that's where the idea of reasonable over rational comes in.
Housel says that it's okay to make financial decisions based on our emotions and values, even if they don't make the most sense mathematically. Sometimes having peace of mind and making choices that feel right to us are more important than getting the highest returns on paper.
He uses the example of saving money even when interest rates are low. Logically, it might make more sense to invest that money for a potentially bigger return, but emotionally, the security and peace of mind you get from having savings can be worth more.
It's about remembering that we're human beings, not robots. Our emotions and values play a big part in our financial decisions. And sometimes the best choice is the one that gives us the most peace of mind, even if it's not the most logical from a purely financial point of view.
It makes me think about that time I decided to pay off a loan even though
Right.
the interest rate was pretty low. Financially, it might not have been the smartest move, but that feeling of being debt-free was amazing.
Mhm.
Have you ever made a similar choice where you prioritized peace of mind over maximizing your financial gains?
Oh, definitely. And like you said, the emotional benefits outweighed any potential financial losses. That brings us to another important concept that Housel talks about: having room for error.
He really stresses the importance of having a financial buffer, a safety net, to protect yourself from life's unexpected events.
Right. Life throws us curveballs all the time. Job losses, medical emergencies, unexpected home repairs. Having that financial cushion helps you deal with those challenges without completely ruining you financially. It's about being prepared for the unexpected, knowing that things don't always go as planned.
It's not just about chasing returns. It's about having a strong financial foundation that can handle whatever life throws at you.
Exactly. So think about it. What are some of the potential surprises that you might need to be prepared for? And what can you do today to build that buffer and feel more financially secure?
These are all things we should be thinking about. And finally, Housel reminds us that our financial plans need to be adaptable.
He says it's important to remember that we're constantly changing. What we value today might be different in 5 or 10 years. Our goals change, our priorities shift, and our financial plans should change too.
So it's not about having a strict financial plan that's set in stone. It's more like having a flexible roadmap that can adapt as our needs and circumstances change.
Exactly. Life is full of twists and turns, and our financial plans should be flexible enough to go with the flow.
So we're back and still diving deep into The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. This book really makes you think differently about wealth, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's not about finding like a secret formula or following the latest investment trend. It's more about understanding yourself,
Wow.
like how your own psychology affects your decisions about money.
Right. Housel really emphasizes that building wealth, it's not sprint, it's a marathon. It's about focusing on the long term, not trying to get rich quick.
Definitely. Patience and discipline, those are key. It's about making those consistent, informed decisions over time. Even when the market's going crazy or you see those tempting get-rich-quick schemes.
Oh yeah, those schemes. And speaking of those lens, Housel also talks about how important it is to tune out all that noise in the financial world. It's so easy to get overwhelmed with all the advice and predictions out there.
Totally. There are so many so-called experts who claim to have all the answers, but you have to remember no one can actually predict the future. So it's really important to be careful about what information you're paying attention to and not make those impulsive decisions based on hype or fear.
So how do we navigate all that information and actually make good financial decisions? What does Housel recommend?
He says it's about developing your own personal financial philosophy, figuring out what your values are, your goals, your risk tolerance, and how much time you have. It's about making your financial decisions based on what really matters to you, not just following the crowd or chasing the latest investment fad.
He encourages us to really ask ourselves those tough questions like, what are my financial goals?
Hmm.
How much risk am I comfortable with? What trade-offs am I willing to make?
By defining your own financial philosophy, you become more aware and intentional about your decisions. You're not just reacting to what's happening in the market or feeling pressured by what other people are doing. You're guided by a clear sense of purpose and direction.
You're taking control of your financial future and making choices that are right for you.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that your financial philosophy, it's not set in stone. It can change as you grow, as your circumstances change, and as your priorities shift.
That goes back to Housel's point about being adaptable. Life throws us curveballs, and our financial plans need to be flexible enough to handle those changes.
He reminds us that what we value today might not be as important in a few years. Our goals change, our priorities change, and our financial plan should reflect that.
It's not about having this rigid financial plan that's written in stone.
Mhm.
It's more like having a roadmap that can adapt as our needs and circumstances change.
Exactly. And that idea of adaptability, it also connects to the concept of room for error that we talked about before.
Oh, right. Having that financial buffer, that safety net, it protects us from those unexpected things,
Yeah.
but it also gives us the freedom to make changes without ruining our financial well-being.
It's like a cushion that allows you to make adjustments without facing financial disaster. You're not scared to make the wrong decision because you know you have that buffer to help you if things go wrong.
So as we wrap up this part of our discussion on the psychology of money, what are some key takeaways that our listeners can apply to their own lives?
I think the biggest one is that financial success, it's not just about numbers and strategies, it's about understanding how your mind works. It's about understanding your emotions, your biases, and how they affect your financial decisions.
We need to be aware of those tendencies we have, like overspending, chasing returns, or making impulsive decisions based on fear or greed. Those habits can really hurt us financially if we're not careful.
And Housel gives some good advice on how to deal with those pitfalls. He says we should set clear financial goals, automate our savings, and talk to trusted financial advisors when we need help.
It's about having systems in place that help us make good financial decisions, even when our emotions are trying to take over.
Exactly. By building those good habits and creating a support system, we're less likely to make bad decisions even when things get stressful.
Another important thing is to focus on what you can control.
We can't control the market, the economy, interest rates, or what's happening in the world. But we can control our spending and our saving and our investment choices.
By focusing on those things, we can actually make a difference in our financial future.
It's about taking responsibility for your financial well-being and not feeling like you're a victim of outside forces.
And that leads us to the idea of defining what success means to you.
It's not about keeping up with the Joneses or trying to achieve some arbitrary level of wealth. It's about creating a financial life that matches your values, your goals, and what you want to achieve.
Hustle reminds us that real wealth is about having enough to live a life that's financially sustainable and personally fulfilling.
It's about finding that balance where your money supports the life you want to live, a life that has purpose, meaning, and financial security.
And we're back, wrapping up our exploration of the psychology of money by Morgan Housel. It's really encouraged us to see wealth in a whole new light, hasn't it?
Definitely. It's been fascinating, digging into these psychological factors that we often overlook when it comes to our financial choices.
From understanding that whole compounding thing to embracing the idea of having enough, Housel really challenges those traditional ideas about money and makes us think about what truly matters in our relationship with it.
He makes it clear that financial success, it's not like reaching a finish line. It's more of a journey.
It's like this ongoing process of learning, adapting, and making those choices that really line up with our values and goals as they change over time.
And I think one of the biggest takeaways for me has been how important self-awareness is. We have to really understand our own financial psychology. Like, what are our strengths? What are our weaknesses? What are our tendencies when it comes to money?
All right, like, are we the type to spend impulsively? Do we struggle with saving? Are we super afraid of risk or maybe a little too eager to take a gamble? Once we know these things about ourselves, we can start figuring out how to manage them.
And Housel offers some really practical advice for doing that. He suggests things like automating your savings, creating a budget that reflects your values, and maybe even talking to a financial advisor you trust.
So it's about having systems in place to help us make those smart decisions even when our emotions are going haywire.
Exactly. We're building good financial habits, creating a strong support system, and that way we're less likely to make those bad choices when things get stressful.
He also talks about the importance of being patient. Building wealth, it takes time.
There are no shortcuts, no magic formulas.
It's about delaying gratification, resisting the urge to chase every hot investment you hear about and sticking to a solid plan even when the market is all over the place.
Which brings us back to that idea of room for error. Having that financial buffer, that safety net, it lets us deal with unexpected things and market swings without totally messing up our long-term financial well-being.
We don't have to be paralyzed by fear because we know we have that cushion to fall back on if things don't go as planned.
And as we wrap up our deep dive into the psychology of money, I think the most powerful message is this. Financial success, it's not just about the numbers.
It's about how you think, how you act, and making sure your financial decisions match your values and what you want to achieve in life.
It's about recognizing that money. It's a tool. It's a means to an end. And true wealth comes from the freedom and security you get when you make those wise financial choices.
So as we close out this episode, we want to encourage you to really think about your own relationship with money.
Ask yourself, what does real wealth mean to you?
What values and goals are guiding your financial decisions?
And what steps can you start taking today to build a financial life that aligns with those values and brings you a sense of peace, freedom, and abundance?
The psychology of money. It gives us some really valuable insights and practical advice to help us on that journey.
And we hope that our conversation today has inspired you to think differently about wealth, and to approach your financial decisions with more purpose and clarity.
Thank you so much for joining us on Wealth of Words. We always love hearing from you, so share your thoughts and insights on this episode with us.
And make sure to follow us for more deep dives into those books that make us think differently and inspire us to live more fulfilling lives.
Until next time, we hope you continue to explore those ideas, and we wish you all the wisdom and success on your financial journey.